Welcome to another how-to video from Bugspray.com. In this video, I'm going to cover how to treat a kitchen sink. This comes up all the time. We'll have people that will list a wide range of insect issues in and around their sinks. So this video is going to detail exactly what you need to use and how to use it, how to inspect, how to prepare, any kind of safety equipment you might need. It's going to be pretty all-inclusive, and it's going to cover pretty much all pests. So the short list of pests that we've had people report in their sinks or around their sinks include springtails, roaches, ants, crickets, mites, sosids, centipedes, millipedes, even animals like frogs or mice. These are all problematic depending on where you live in the country and the type of drain system that you have, meaning are you on septic or into the city sewer lines. These can all factor into what types of problems you might get. The most common ones and the most frustrating ones seem to be the springtails, book lice, sosids, ants, and roaches. So this video is going to present not only the proper inspection, but also the key areas that you need to focus on when treating for those pests. And the good news is that the products we're going to detail will cover all of those pests. So if you follow this to the letter, if you find all the cracks and crevices and you're using our products, you can solve the problem in the kitchen sink. Now this is one video in a series of videos that we're doing. So the previous one covered how to treat a microwave. This one obviously is dealing again with the sink and the cabinet underneath it. We're going to have a few more, some that will deal with furniture like a clothing dresser and maybe a couch. We're also going to have some videos that will cover how to treat cabinets, say above a sink or in other areas, not necessarily underneath a sink. So all of these areas are going to be covered and in great detail. So that's why we have to do them individually. Now, one thing about a kitchen sink is that when we get underneath, first it gets dark and it gets complicated. There are so many things in here where pests can thrive. So many areas, so many cracks and crevices. So the first thing we're going to do in this area is empty it, and then we're going to go over all of the areas that we're going to focus on when we're going to be doing the treating, because rest assured there are countless areas where these nests, or these what we call pockets of springtails or ants or roaches, can accumulate. And all it takes is you missing one little pocket and the problem can persist. So at this point the cabinet is now empty, and as we take a quick glance around we can get a sense of the area that we have to focus on. Obviously we have some pipes, we have a sinkerator, we have this 2x4 and this 2x4. These are critical areas and in most cases harbor all kinds of small pests, specifically springtails, sosids, ants. We're going to make believe that this is the end of the cabinet, meaning that this wall goes to the top. In fact, there's actually another cabinet on the other side, a couple of drawers, but that's for another video. So in this case we're just going to focus on this area and assume that this wall goes straight to the ceiling of this space. But this sinkerator, this light switch, which really is not for a light, it's basically to power the sinkerator on and off. And then if we go below and follow the power cord, we find this space here. This is an area that is oftentimes missed and harbors all kinds of pests. What we're talking about here is the false bottom or the false floor that the cabinet presents. In fact, this is not the floor. if you move out and look, you can see that the cabinet is raised a good 5 inches above the ground or the hardwood floors. And there's a space in here. Insects love being in here. They have ports of entry from the drain line, from the water line, another water line, so you have your hot and cold water line, and then of course the power cord here. So this space is vital. But what we're going to do now is start from the top and work our way down. And again, we're going to assume that we're treating for a range of pests that include the most common ones: springtails, ants, roaches, sosids, mites, all of these small pests. And we're going to focus on the areas that are critical above the sink, because invariably they come from the sink and then they get into the areas around the sink. Most people have a perception it's one or the other, but it's almost always both. Now this incinerator can really only be treated with the lemon air, and the lemon air is ideal for this. As our website details, you simply mix 2 to 4 ounces of this with a gallon of water, and you pour half a gallon down a drain, let it sit overnight, and it's going to soak in there. It's going to remove organic matter. It's going to kill any insects, not only in the incinerator, but down here where the elbow is. This is the critical area. And then of course, by pouring a gallon, you're going to flush more into the rest of the drain system, and that ensures that you're getting all the voids. The lemon air is also highly volatile, so once it's in the drain system, it's volatilizing down and getting any insects that might be out of range of where the actual liquid goes. So it's a great product overall for any sink, and it should be used on a regular basis whether you have a problem or not. We recommend using it once a month during the warm period, as far as your region of the country. Even in the winter months, it's not a bad thing to use, particularly if you're using your incinerator, because incinerators are grinding up organic matter. So all that stuff is accumulating there. Lemon air is going to remove it. It's going to get it to flush down the drain, and the odors that come from this will be gone. The lemon air by default has a nice odor, lemony, and it's very, very effective, not only at getting rid of all that gunk, but at killing off any insects that might be in there. Unfortunately, lemon air doesn't have a residual, so if you have an ongoing pest problem, you need to use it once a week is what we recommend during the season. But again, it just depends on your situation. So if you've got a problem, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week is going to be needed to get rid of the issue. Usually within a week, 2 or 3 treatments, the problem is gone from the sink, and then you can go back to once every 2 weeks to a month of applying it, and you should be fine. But let's talk now about where the insects go once they come out of the sink. So assuming you don't have a problem, and then some springtails come up, or some mites or some ants, when they come up, they're going to try and climb. And when they climb out, they're either going to get on the counter, but oftentimes they're looking for little cracks and crevices. And if you take a close look, you can see this construction here has all kinds of cracks and crevices for insects to thrive. So the base of the faucet, where it mounts, if you had individual spigots for cold and hot water, it would be the same thing. You would have to get underneath them. The actual joint here has to be treated. This pulls out and essentially extends the faucet so that you can, be a little flexible with your application. However, all of this pipe, all of this channel down here is a nightmare, and insects love it. They love to go in there, they love to hide in there. So When we're going to do a treatment, we have to focus on these key areas of the faucet neck, the faucet itself if it comes apart and has a joint like this. Of course, the spigot, the cold water control, the hot water control. These are key areas to focus on when you're trying to get rid of anything that might be around the sink. But this is probably the biggest problem that people miss. Technically, this is sealed during construction, and I'm talking about the joint where the actual sink meets the countertop. But over time, this joint, the silicone, it wears down, the grout wears down, and insects will infiltrate there. Food gets in there. This is a huge problem, and it's directly linked to this 2x4. So that 2x4 is supporting the actual sink and holding it tight to the counter. And it does an adequate job, but not good enough, because insects will get in there. This is one of the key areas. Another key area would be if your sink has an overflow little hole. Many sinks have this so that the sink cannot overfill and flood your kitchen. It used to be very common and standard on all sinks, but not anymore. So now you can buy sinks and have them installed, and you won't find that type of a hole. But if you have that drain hole, you're going to need to treat in there. So when we're talking about treating, we're not talking about using the Luminaire. We're talking about using the FSMP aerosol. Now, for the sake of this video, I'm actually not going to be spraying this. And there's one main reason. FSMP is an oil-based product. It's got an odor. If you're going to be doing your application here, you can probably get away with not needing any safety equipment. But as soon as you get down here in a controlled or a small little box like this, so we don't want to be spraying the FSMP in here with our heads in here. And this is where people just don't do a good job. They start using the FSMP and they're smelling it, so they just go like tss, 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 and they just tss, and they think they've done the job, and that is so wrong. It's not going to work. So if you're going to treat this properly, you've got to get in there, and it's going to require you being on top of the areas that you're spraying, and most importantly, spraying it upwards, which means spray and vapor is going to be coming down. So you need to be using the proper safety equipment. That includes a face shield. It's got like a clear window, and a respirator. And I like to wear the surgical gloves. This way, if anything gets on my hands, I don't have to worry about washing. Remember, you're going to be underneath the sink. That means anything dripping down can get on your face. So goggles, not going to cut it. Face shield is the way to go. The respirator, generally not needed, but in this case, again, you're going to be in a very tight area and confined. So the respirator is the way to go. Well, let's get back to the treatment. On the top, if we're going to do this, we're going to have to use the FSMP, and we're going to want to spray a little bit around the base. Now, since I'm not actually spraying the FSMP, I'm going to just make a simple sound. It's going to be tss, because that's kind of like what it sounds like when it comes out. So if I was treating this, I would have a paper towel, and I would just go tss, 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 and then I would take the paper towel and pick up any that's around the base, kind of wipe it down, and it's penetrating that crack crevice. The FSMP not only repels, it kills on contact. It's highly repellent, as stated, and it lasts. It does well, even in this environment. So if you treat this with the FSMP, nothing is going to be in there. But don't stop there. Go ahead and do this. Tss, tss. Get around that little seal. You're going to know pretty quick if any is going in. If it's all running down, you get your paper towel on there, just wipe it down. It's oil-based. It's not going to stain anything. It's not going to corrode it. It's like putting WD-40 almost on this stainless steel. Now this is a critical location, and we want to make it so no insects are in there and no insects want to go in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull this out, and we're going to flood this for a good 5 seconds. and then we're just going to seal it up. That's it. This area here could be an issue, but once you seal it up, all the fumes that are coming up are going to take care of anything that might be there. So at this point, we've treated the faucet. Now, if you have the cold water control and hot water control, you're going to need to do the same thing. Hit the base, and depending on the faucet head, I have seen faucet heads that have insects living up inside. So the faucet head has to come off. If you have a screw on the top of your faucet head, take it off, pull that faucet head off, spray the base of it. That is a key area for certain sinks. It just depends on the design. In this case, we don't have to worry about that, but many sinks have them. Now let's focus on this. This seam is a critical area, and I would want to get as much material in there as I could. Unfortunately, I'm pretty confident that this one is sealed so well, we've never had a problem. However, if it was to be treated and it was taking product, I would spray pretty long. Let's say I spray this and it all just came running down. I would just do this. That's it. Barely 1 second. So right along the crack. This gap here looks like it might actually take. So maybe, and across here. This is how you get the seal properly treated. Now, if you've done this and you've noticed that there's an area where the material goes in really well, it's almost guaranteed that there's going to be a pocket of insects between that 2x4 and the base of this cabinet. So you would want to get this up in there, and you would want to hit it pretty well. That would be a critical point to focus on. So now we've applied the FSMP to all the areas on the top area around the sink. We've applied the lemon air down the drain. So now we have to focus on the cabinet, the area underneath the sink. And for that, as I stated, you have two choices. You can go with the FSMP, but if you're going to do that, you're going to need to wear the safety equipment. The great news about the FSMP is that you could theoretically rule out this area as having a problem if you are totally thorough with your application. And what I mean by that is if you're not missing any spot down here, you can eliminate all the pests in one full swoop. It's not easy. There are many, many, many professionals I know who cannot do the job properly. Simply put, they're not thorough enough. They miss one key area, and that's all it takes. Whatever area you're going to miss when using something like FSMP, that's where the surviving insects will go. And that's because it's, again, highly repellent. So once it's in place, it's going to kill everything that's there. But you're not going to get every single space. Remember, this is a crack and crevice material. We're not spraying it over the surface here. So we're focusing on cracks and crevices. If you notice, no crack and crevice here. No need to spray. But if we look at pipes, like here, crack and crevice. Tss, tss, crack and crevice. Tss, tss, crack and crevice here. Tss, tss, crack and crevice. Tss, tss. In the sinkerator, that's an overflow or some kind of a pressure relief. We don't have to worry about that. But this, broadcast on it. Tss, get it all wet, because in this seal, this is where it fits in there, there is all kinds of moisture and organic matter. Very, very important. Let's take a look at the faucet itself with water flow. You can see here, we've got gaps here. Tss, 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 tss. All of this has to get FSMP on it. This is a release vent, and it's designed to prevent any type of buildup of gases in the system. So by code, most states require this. Insects love this. It's a great place for them to get into. So get your straw up in there. Tss,
Give it a good 3 or 4 second blast. Get that saturated. The joint itself, a quick little around the edges. When we look over here, the electric switch I was telling you about, huge problem. The electric line that comes out, the Romax, get it up in here. When we look at this hinge, huge potential. Get this. This one too. We look at this corner, we can see some water and some cracks over the years have allowed a gap. This is a spot I would want to treat. As I look through the front, I'm not seeing anything, but once again, we'd have to treat these hinges. And for the most part, we've covered everything that we can see before getting in. Now we're going to get in. And if we're doing the FSMP, we're going to have our safety equipment on, so it's not going to be easy. But it's what you have to do if you're going to treat this properly. In the first part, we'll be looking up at that sink. So now you can kind of get a sense for what I was saying before. You can see right through this gap, the part of the sink that is supported by the 2x4. The 2x4 has what appears to be some kind of black brace that goes over the edge or the lip of the sink. And then if you look carefully, you can see that there's a gap between that 2x4 and the sink. Huge problematic area. In the front section, we have the same thing, but that's because this actually has a front cabinet little space I haven't shown yet, but this pops down, and you can see I could fit my hand through. We'll talk about that from above. I failed to show you that, but you can see here this hinge that would have to be treated. You can also see above the hinge where there's a gap in the wood frame, and that would need to be treated. So way up here, this would be a key area. And of course, and then from this side, you can see what we'd have to do. Now we're laying directly underneath the spray. So once I start to shoot this, it's going to come down on me. And this is why it's imperative that you're wearing the proper safety equipment. Obviously, you can slide yourself further into the space and try to eliminate how much is coming down on you. But at the end of the day, using this in here is not easy. It's a little tricky. But if you want to solve a problem, that's what it's going to take. It's going to take a across that, and it's going to take some up in there. It's going to take a lot of material over here from this spot all the way across. Saturating up into that gap. You can see the hose fits up there, and the straw getting up there is a sure sign that you have a space that insects can infiltrate. So when we get to the back section, what we see is more of the same. So up here, get that really good. Where the 2x4 meets the wall, the back part of the counter. See this? Is big gap. Roaches, everything love to live in there. Up here where the cabinet meets the countertop, all the way across. And then sometimes you'll have holes in the wall. These are really problematic. Just let it spray. Good 5 seconds. Just get that whole area. The FSMP is going to kill anything that's there, and it's going to repel them. So again, just give this a general spray. All these little gaps of the joints have to be hit. Here, here, and then the back side of the incinerator. Once again, all of these surfaces have cracks and crevices. If you look here, you can see clearly this crack here. The seam for the tank, that needs to be sprayed. The bottom side of the unit, needs to be treated. And then we get over here, and on these pipes, you can see the subfloor, or I should say the false floor, that leads to the space underneath. Huge problem. So the FSMP needs to get in there, and it needs to be injected pretty heavy. Let me get repositioned. So in this case, what I would do is get the straw in there and just let it go. Then I come at it from a different angle. Now granted, most of it's shooting towards the front, but that's what we want. This can will shoot a good 5 or 6 feet. So you're getting everything when you spray. So let's go on to this side. And then back this way. If we take a step out, we have this hole here. So let's do it here too. And then straight down towards the front. Considering that we have a hole here and a hole here, we've been able to get most everything. That being said, I would still drill a hole right here. Would be a great spot. 3/30 seconds is all you need. A 3/30 seconds drill bit will fit this straw, and then you simply inject it or fit the straw through the hole and let it run for 5 seconds. The treatment underneath this false floor will hold up really, really well. It's a controlled environment. If there's any insects in there, the FSMP is going to last months. They're not going to want to be in there. That being said, every 2 or 3 months, if you're having a problem, get the straw in there. Do an application to renew the product that's in there. But going back to this area, I've covered most of the key areas. I've covered the points that you got to focus on, okay, around these sockets. We don't want to spray the aerosol in here because we might damage the actual switch. But if there's an insect in there, it's going to have to come out, and the FSMP is going to get it, all right? We've got the hinges. We've got all the cracks and crevices of the actual cabinet. We've gotten, I don't know that we've mentioned around this pipe, but we would want to saturate this pipe heavy, because even though we got behind it with this hole, there's a gap here, and this wood is a good inch thick. So they could be just sitting right underneath this lip. And if you just treat underneath, and we're not treating this surface, they can easily climb up and come out. So we want to get all the way around this. We want to treat underneath this one as well. Even though we've sprayed here, we want to get underneath this little cap, a couple of holes there, just because they could be on the bottom side of the cap, right? You can see here, they could be up underneath this piece, and we don't want to give them that chance. So while this is up, you take the FSMP and you give it a spritz. Make sure you eliminate that. Eliminate it as a potential place for anything to be. The goal with the FSMP is to treat everything. And if you're thorough and you hit all these locations, there will be no insects left. They'll all come out, they'll all be dead within a day or two, and they will not want to be back in here. How many people are capable of doing a job like this? Not a lot. I've spent a lot of time talking about it and showing you, and the reality is that even at the professional level, there are very, very few technicians who would be able to walk into an environment like this and cover every inch and be as thorough as I've been in this video. It's just not common these days. Everyone has gotten into the habit of using baits. So they set out a little bit of roach bait, a little bit of ant bait, and they have no idea how to treat when there's springtails.
or if there's mites, if you get spider mites, or if you have crickets, or even book lice. All of these pests, socids, all of these pests can thrive in this environment. There's so many places for them to hide. Now, I've pointed out what it requires if you're going to use the FSMP. It's not easy. It is super time consuming. And yet, it is the most effective. If you use this, you can not only kill everything, but you can make it so that they don't want to be here after you're done treating. They will ignore this location. And then one by one, you can treat each cabinet and completely clean them out. And it takes so much time. So for some people, they're not willing to get down and dirty and do the thorough job that's required when using the FSMP. And we get it. It's not easy. It's a lot of work. So the FSMP is the least costly option, with the drawback of the odor and the fact that you have to be super thorough when you're doing the job. Now, there is a second option that is super easy to do, and it's odorless. So essentially what it does is basically eliminate the need to have to get down and dirty in this cabinet space. And it's very, very effective. It's super easy to do. It doesn't change what's going on up here. So for up here, we're still going to want to use the lemon air down the drain. We're going to want to use the FSMP for all these key areas that we discussed above the cabinet. But that's it. For the actual cabinet, we can move over to the mini mister combined with the Bithor. This combination is lethal on any of the insects that we've talked about. And the beauty of this is that you can do it from this position and just literally saturate by misting all the surfaces in here. You can reach up and surface spray that 2x4, and it's going to get into the joint. Remember, the mini mister puts out the mist that covers everything. So in the end, when you do the treatment with the mini mister, there's no place that these insects can be. There's no odor with the Bithor, and you'll have this area completely treated in a fraction of the time. It's not going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be thorough. You might ask, what's the drawback? There's two drawbacks. First, the Bithor costs way more compared to the aerosol. The aerosol is, I don't know, $25 or $30 a can. The Bithor is going to cost you nearly $100 for a jug. However, it makes a bunch of gallons, 20 gallons. So it goes a long way, and you can use it for many things, not just in the mini mister. But that is the difference. You're basically buying the time savings and the thoroughness when you invest in the Bithor and the mini mister, as opposed to having to manually go over this with a fine-tooth comb, which is what you're doing when you apply the FSMP. So right now what I'm going to do is turn on the mini mister, and assuming it was filled with Bithor, here's how fast the application would go. It's pretty amazing. But basically, I'm just going to start up high, and I'm going to get these areas like this, and then I'm going to come down on the back, and then I'm going to hit the front base and up through here, and that's it. So here we go. You can actually see the UV light coming out from the mini mister as I spray everything down. You can see the water getting on all the hoses and pipes. I will still reach up here and try to direct it behind the sink, but I've gotten now the brackets, I've gotten the far wall, I'm getting the sidewall, I'm getting around the electric outlet, I'm getting the hinges, I'm getting the base here, and the hinges here. I probably over applied, frankly. But now, with the treatment in place, it's definitely a little moist. You can see on my finger. It's a little wet, but it's not soaking. This is not a mess. The mist is ideal for this type of an application. It covers everything. The Bithor is non-repelling, so that means it's not going to scatter the insects. It will quickly kill. One of the components does a quick kill, but then once that wears off, the second active in the Bithor will last a good long time, probably a month in an environment like this, maybe longer, but the rule here is real simple. A thorough treatment like I've done would certainly kill off anything that's active in here, because any insects that came out from inside the electric outlet, for example, they would walk over the treated surface, bring some of the chemical back into their nest and kill all the others in there. This would happen over a period of days. So it does take longer compared to the FSMP. It's not as fast, but you will get the same result. You will knock out the problem once and for all. And frankly, for most people, I would highly recommend the mini mister with the Bithor. Yes, it's going to cost you more. However, the advantage is clear. By using both together, you're able to cover everything completely, so there's no place for the insects to go. They're not going to be able to avoid the treatment. Remember, the FSMP is highly repellent. So if you miss 1% of the area, you're going to have an ongoing issue. Now, it's important to point out that even though I've done the treatment with the mini mister, I would still take the FSMP and get her down in here. I go through the bottom where the pipe cuts down into the space underneath this little floor. I do the same around the drain line and the other pipe that goes down. And I drill the hole here. The FSMP in that space is going to keep insects out of it, and it's going to purge them from there. Now, one other area I did want to mention is this little sink handle kind of drop down false drawer that we have. It's obviously for sponges and whatnot, but once again we have spaces here. So if we were using the FSMP, we would need to get that through here. It would be a quick on the side, same thing. On these hinges, these are all key spots for these guys to hide. There is actually a hole you can kind of see right there where the hinge sets into the door. Insects go in there. Springtails, mites, book lice, they love getting underneath these hinges. So all these spots have to be treated with the FSMP. If you look here, you have the top of the counter where it meets the face of the actual counter. This would all need to be treated with the FSMP. Conversely, if we were to use the mini mister, it would be a fraction of the time. So all we'd have to do is turn this on and just literally go across this. And we're done. Very, very easy to do. Once you treat with the mini mister, you need to let everything sit. So it's got to dry. If we look in here, we can see it's still got some moisture, some beads of water on there. It's very dry right now in this house, so it will dry out in about an hour, maybe 2 hours. We always recommend on non-porous surfaces, use that as your monitor. So anything like wood, it's going to dry really fast. What you want to look for is going to be the plastic and the metal, the places that are non-porous. Wait for those areas to dry. Once they dry, everything can go back in safely. There'll be no hazard present because you've used a very, very diluted solution when you did your application. And that means that there is no accumulative significant amount of active down here that can get picked up on anything. Same thing up here. This actually gives you a great view of the 2x4 and that gap again. You can kind of see it right there. If I was treating with the FSMP, I would have shot it through here. And if I'm using the mini mister, I would shoot the mist up in there. But I think I've covered everything about as thorough as possible. And I hope that you've got a better understanding of what it takes to treat these areas. We have so many customers who call throughout the year with insects in their sinks, and they get our products. They get the FSMP, they get the Lemon Air, they get the Bithor, and they're doing their treatments around the sink area. But they're constantly struggling. They continue to find dead bugs in the sink, or they're finding some randomly down in the bottom cabinet. In all of these cases, with no exception, it is not product failure. Your insects are not immune to the chemical. It is simply applicator's failure. Failure to hit all these key spots. You've missed something important. This is the reason why these insects get to linger and persist. You've not gotten some key area. Maybe it's where the actual subfloor or false floor meets the real flooring. You know, I didn't treat down here. I would normally. Again, I'm not going beyond the scope of the actual cabinet. I'm staying focused on the cabinet. But for sure, this area needs to be sprayed with Bithor. Obviously, you could use the FSMP, but there's not really a crack or a crevice here. This is ideal for the mini mister. In summary, what I'm hoping is that you have a better understanding about how to treat a sink area when we're dealing with these insects in the kitchen or in a bathroom or laundry room, any type of a sink actually, and the cabinet underneath it. If you're thorough, using either the FSMP by itself or in combination with the Bithor and the mini mister, you can solve the problem. You just got to follow the directions, follow the application process as I've outlined it today, and you'll be able to knock these guys out for good. So I hope you learned something from this video, and stay tuned for the next one. Not sure if we're going to cover a standard cabinet or maybe a dresser, some other furniture, but there's so many important points to all these appliances and the different sections of the home as regarding the treatment if you want to knock these pests out. We plan on covering them all. So if you stay with this series and keep watching our videos, you're going to know how to tackle these problems. Because at some point you will have roaches, you will have ants, you will have springtails. If you're watching this video, you've either had them or you're dealing with them. And if you follow the rest of our channel, you're going to see all the answers, because we're talking about 35 years plus in the field, and pretty much every scenario has been encountered. The key in all of the problem solving is knowing how to handle the different areas appropriately and thoroughly, because at no point is there an insect that can withstand the products when the products are applied properly. So thanks for watching my how to treat a kitchen sink and the cabinet underneath it from Bugspray.com.